Howdy, and welcome to the Lost Rider Podcast. It's an honor and privilege to address you in the capacity of an interviewer, reporter, and media member. Too many modern media outlets have forgone the integrity and responsibility required of credible information sources. What you will receive here are straightforward discussions with legislators, agency leaders, biologists, engineers, doctors, and countless other experts that have the answers to questions often circulated as kitchen table issues. The title Lost Rider may be thought of literally as well as in the metaphorical sense. While there has been the instance that I was momentarily a little turned around at night in a wilderness area, the idea of being a lost rider in life, well, that fits most folks at some time. These renderings are coming to you in the form of the 25-year-old radio program, The News from the Camp House. It still airs every Saturday morning at 6:30 a.m. Central Time on KULM 98.3 FM out of Columbus, Texas. The original intent was to relate outdoor topics to the general public. Immediately, it was found that all issues are relatable to the outdoors and that people are people. They all play a role and they all have a vested interest. It's this program's desire to answer common questions about how the world works, how it will operate in the future, and what's the holdup? So please listen, enjoy, and never hesitate to contact us with more questions and feedback. Good morning and welcome to this weekend's edition of News from the Camp House, the listening post to the Texas Sportsmen Association. This is Herman Brune, and this weekend's edition is also brought to us by the Shaw's Bend Social Club, country club folks who don't have a country club. Stop in for a cold one. All right, I'll tell you what, we're here this morning. We have a special guest with us this morning, Corey Mason. He is the executive director of the Dallas Safari Club. All right, Corey, how you doing this morning?
I am great, Herman. Thank you for having me today. I appreciate it.
Oh, I appreciate it. My listeners appreciate you taking time to visit with everybody. First thing, first rattle out of the box. I think it's been a year or more ago you gave me some money. I think I ought to tell you what I did with it.
Okay.
All right, Dallas Safari Club sponsored the Texas Outdoor Writers Youth Writing Awards. All right, so
yes,
the Youth Writing Awards has been something the Texas Outdoor Writers have had forever and ever. It's just a matter of, it's a kind of a big thing to keep going. It's, it takes a little bit of effort, takes a little bit of doing, and then, of course, it requires sponsorship. Dallas Safari Club and Corey are good for that. So, the bright idea struck me. I got a good night's sleep one time, woke up in the morning and knew just what to do. We went to the Texas Brigades, and Corey, you're familiar with them.
Yes, sir. Very familiar.
All right. The whole. I had tried the Outdoor Tomorrow Foundation, but their structure really wasn't that we could solicit to all those kids that well. It was very difficult to solicit to all those kids, as well as collect everything and try to put on a contest. So what we did, we went to the Texas Brigades, and they have 9 summer camps. My listeners have heard a little bit about this, but I know Corey hasn't. They have 9 summer camps. They have about 30 kids in each camp. These kids apply to go to these camps. They go to conservation classes. They learn how a whole bunch of stuff works. And they have a bunch of outdoor activities. And it's high school kids learning college-level conservation practices. And it's great. Well, these kids are required to write thank you letters to their beneficiaries. They're one of the most personal and sincere form of writing that a person can do. So what we did was we sent a Texas Outdoor Writer member to each of these camps to give these kids some writing tips and explain the youth writing program to them. And then they, in turn, write their thank you letters. All the kids write their thank you letters, and then 1 or 2 will be selected from each camp, and they will be forwarded to us, and those will be the recipients of, we'll pick 2 out of those, and those will be the recipients of the Texas Outdoor Youth Writing Awards. We'll announce those winners at the Fall Stampede, the annual Fall Stampede in October, and then the winners will be awarded next year at the Texas Outdoor Writers Annual Conference next year in Rockport, that first weekend in May. So, Corey, you got to be there to award these things.
I would enjoy that. I appreciate the efforts of Texas Outdoor Writers Association to engage those young adults. It's a great move. Thank you for that effort, Herman.
Well, I just, I kind of did it. That's one of those things that you got it all set up, and we didn't want to let it go by the wayside. It was certainly it's something that, like you say, it's worth the effort. It's something that needs to be addressed. It needs to be it needs to keep going. And this seemed like a good way to get a good cross-section of all the kids in Texas. And we certainly got participation up. If you got 9 camps with 30 kids in each camp, you figure you got 270 letters to look at, and that's more than we had in the past.
Well, those brigades camp students, to your point, are, they learn so much about outdoors and conservation, and they learn so much leadership skills as well, and personal development. It's a really great model. I've had the opportunity to participate in a couple of different of those camps, the Bottleway camp and as well as the Waterfowl Brigades camps, and they are just a tremendous investment into the next generation.
Oh, they're a lot of fun, and I guess one of the things I took away from it, I did I think 4 of them this year, and these kids are focused. They're in high school, and when you ask them, what do you think you'd like to do? You're here today, getting. And I'm listening to the biology and some of the stuff that they're getting out of some of this conservation stuff, and I'm going, wow, this is stuff, I didn't get till I was at A&M. And I had an exceptionally good biology background in high school, and there was still some of this stuff that I said, this is college level stuff these kids are getting. And it's just exceptional that these kids are in high school, they're focused, they have an idea of where they're going in their lives. And when I was in high school, that definitely was not me.
Yeah, there are some upstanding kids that are going to be leaders in whatever community they choose to be in. If it's agriculture or wildlife conservation or whatever, they have a bent towards that outdoors as well.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And you see some of these kids that they will go through various camps. They get started early. The following year, they may go try a different camp. And after they've done 2 or 3 of them, they come back and they want to be directors. They come back and they want to help, and they want to teach, they want to be a part of it and keep it going.
You bet, absolutely. Yeah, that leader concept where they continue to engage them and further develop their interpersonal skills as well. It's a great model.
Yes, sir. All right, okay, let me think. What else was I going to talk to you about? There's a big thing that you and I should visit about just a little bit, or hell, for the rest of the show. And I know my listeners get sick of hearing this, but I preach the North American Wildlife Conservation Model. And I preach it and preach it and preach it. And I think my listeners get sick of it. But it's so significant. It's so important to the wildlife community. And it's astounding to me that every outdoor communicator, every writer, every photographer, every conservation group that everybody in the outdoor industry isn't out there beating the drum going, hey guys, wake up. This is what sustains wildlife and has been doing it for the last 100 years. This is the way it works. This is one of the few standards we have in today's society that we can point at and say, we know this works. And this is the way you got to do it, or it's going to get messed up. And it's just beyond my understanding. I see me and Brian Lynn beating the drum. And of course, Brian's got a whole lot bigger platform than I have at the U.S. Sportsman's Alliance. But the best I could do was say that when they made me president over at Texas Outdoor Writers, now I'm chairman of the board, and I told them, I said, we need to make sure our members promote and advocate this, understand it, and can regurgitate it. I said, because this is what keeps us going. This is what finances us. This is what gives us all jobs. And, without this, we don't have wildlife.
It's a super important model, and I think every hunter out there, Herman, first of all, a big giant amen. And every hunter out there needs to know 2 or 3 very important sort of elevator speech type bullet points on the North American model. It's a very unique position in which the sportsmen, which we all know are the original and continuing custodians of all things outdoors, wildlife habitats, wildlife proper. In 1937, when they induced a self-imposed tax, 11% tax, to ensure a consistent and continued funding stream for wildlife conservation that, fast forward now to this last year, generated $1 billion with a B dollars to go to putting biologists in the field, technicians doing research, and people to manage our wildlife sustainably across North America. It is unequivocally the most successful model in the world.
Yes. You guys are, I use y'all for an example all the time. Whenever I talk about this, I go back to 2014 with that rhino deal.
Yes, sir.
And, and I go, right there it is, guys. This is how it works. And this is what we have to educate people on, because, without this, and I go back to the story about y'all were going to raffle off one tag for one animal that was identified, that was targeted, that somebody was going to get to go take this old bull out of the herd, that was killing cows, that was keeping the young bulls from breeding, that was a detriment to an endangered species. Go take this one bull out of the herd. And it was twisted and presented in such a manner by the anti-hunting crowd and set out there to all the great majority of people in the U.S. society that don't know come here from Sikkim. And, and that's how they get people on their side. That's how they get, that's how they manage to smear hunters. And meanwhile, it's this is why I say it ought to be in curriculum, and every outdoor communicator out there, every conservation group, everybody should take this to heart, and to me should make their #1 purpose in the world. I'm not impressed with the bait and bullet sellers. I want to see the guys that can make a difference in public perception.
Well, I couldn't agree more. And when you have, again, the model that has continued to generate the restoration and ultimate conservation in a sustainable manner of species from quail to turkey to elk, to make it very personal to right here in North America. And then you look abroad, for example, the rhino example that you gave there, for context, you have people in the Western world that wake up in a safe house in the morning, they turn on the light switch and turn on water, and all those things are amenities to their house, trying to cast their own ideologies, in this particular case on rural Namibians and the Ministry of Environment and Tourism, that rhino was going to be taken because he was detrimental to the growth of the black rhino population in Namibia. And so they had the opportunity to raise $300,000+ towards rhino conservation in Namibia, and no one stopped to ask those that manage those species on a daily basis what they need. We see the same thing here from the anti-hunting organizations. If they ever slowed down and they asked the state of Nebraska or Texas or fill in the blank what they need to manage wildlife sustainable in their state, the first response would be sportsmen.
Right. I'll tell you what, let's take a quick break and thank the folks who let us come on here every Saturday morning. We'll be right back. Thank goodness for all the great sponsors we have here at News from the Camp House. H-E-B Food Stores. That's Stephen Tice at H-E-B. He helps me. He helps the community. He's a great man. I'm so thankful H-E-B loosened him up, lets him go around and sponsor a few things. H-E-B's got all your food needs. It's the greatest food store we got here in Columbus. Thank goodness for H-E-B. First State Bank. You go over to First State Bank, they'll take care of all your loans, all your deposits, your savings, anything you need. Bunch of great hometown people over there. You got Celia Tobias, John Pollock. Everybody over there is looking out for you. Miss Barbara Barta. It's a great bunch of folks at the First State Bank is also sponsoring News from the Camp House. First State Bank takes care of all my business. Baumgart Agency, Susan Baumgart at the Baumgart Agencies, her and Germania. She told me to plug Germania. Germania is a insurance that she likes to everybody to know about. The Baumgart Agencies. Miss Susan and I are classmates, being classmates. She got me out of high school, sat right beside her, put us in alphabetical order where I could copy. And Susan Baumgart over at the Baumgart Agency taking care of all your insurance needs. Lyco Realty, one of the original sponsors of News from the Camp House. Lyco Realty, the oldest real estate company in the county, and for the last 3 years voted the favorite realtor in the county. Lyco Realty, that's Miss Kimberly Johnson, that's Crockett's granddaughter. More kinfolks and classmates and great people from Colorado County. People from Colorado County helping people from Colorado County, that's great. Oh, thank goodness for all these wonderful people come to me want to be sponsors for News from the Camp House. Good morning and welcome to the second half of this week's News from the Camp House, the listening post to the Texas Sportsman Association. This is Herman Brune. We're here this weekend with Dallas Safari Club Executive Director Corey Mason. And, we were talking, and I'm sitting here beating the drum trying to put an idea in Corey's head because he's already got it. But to lean on some of these communicators, lean on some of these other conservation groups. We've got to get this in front of us. We've got to make this more the wildlife conservation model. We have to make it more evident in people's lives and where people understand what we're talking about when we're talking about it. Okay, right here in Texas, y'all kept up with everything that went on in the legislature in this past session?
We're certainly tracking it, yes, sir.
All right, the puppy mill.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that has an impact on all your dog breeders.
Yes, sir, it does. It's a continued attempt there for those that you mentioned earlier.
All right, well, here's the deal. When you go to the average person on the street that has a job, draws a paycheck, bank, insurance company, wherever in the hell they work, and you say something about the legislature just passed a bill to stop puppy mills in Texas. And the first response you're going to get is, oh my God, well, I'm so glad, you got everybody running around neutering everything these days. And it's good, bad, indifferent, whatever. But they don't realize this is an anti-hunting bill that this is aimed at. This is brought by anti-hunting people, aimed at the people who raise and train labs, hunting dogs. It's an anti-hunting bill. Go ahead.
Well, and it's a great example as well of one of those that's been introduced a number of times, and then it finally gets enough traction and gets enough supporters, and it ultimately gets something that's signed into law. And so it's a way that, again, it's a further demonstration of the way that the the anti-hunting community works very methodically and very patiently to get these things to the finish line.
Yes, this has been something as long as I've been, this radio program started in 2000, and I think the first time I ever went to Austin, this was one of the bills that was already floating around then already, and you can figure, so they stayed on it for that long, until they finally got it passed. And it's really is not going to have as much of an impact on the people breeding pit bulls and all that kind of stuff that they visualize when they say puppy mill, as it has an impact on permitting and licensing and restricting, setting regulations on your legitimate dog breeders.
Yeah, you're exactly right. It's those folks that are breeding sporting dogs that are obviously great custodians of those animals, take great care of them. They're family pets. They enjoy time in the field, and people that probably provide a level of care that beyond even the understanding of those that maybe impose the bill.
Right. All right. The other thing the Dallas Fire Club does that people don't realize is y'all represent hunters and you represent your members, and then pretty much represent all sportsmen at what is known as the CITES convention.
We do, yes, sir. So just over the last several months, I've been to Panama in November of last year at every basically 3 years, what's called the Conference of the Parties, where all 180 plus signatories to the CITES convention, a UN declaration basically, attend and basically determine and then ultimately implement international policy associated with the trade and regulation of these species. And that's everything from corals to sharks to clearly mammals of all kinds, and species of mammals that are considered from there to, and then most recently within the last month, I was in Geneva, Switzerland for the Animals Committee meeting, in which we were discussing things from black bears to wolves to lynx to African elephant and lion, everything in between. And it's an incredibly important venue, again, that determines international policy, that then leads to national policy, that then determines state level and federal policy. So it's one of those unseen things by many sportsmen, but it's critically important for sustainable use and all things outdoors that we as hunters and outdoorsmen know and appreciate.
All right, and it's, I try to draw the line because we can sit down here in Texas and too often everybody's complacent and they think, well, we got Texas Gulf Coast, we've got all these hunting ranches now, and we've got, we got what we got. All this doesn't really affect us, but it does, and that is, evident with that puppy mill bill. It shows you the encroachment, the steady leeching in of these leftist policies on wildlife. I always say, God bless Texas. We're fortunate. We're a private property state. I enjoy and I made a lot of my living on public lands, but God bless Texas. We're a private property state. That saves us a little bit, but they want to protect the red wolf. They would put grizzly bears back in the panhandle if they could, and it's all. We have to keep track of this stuff, or it will have an impact.
We have to have a proactive voice that's watching this thing on this big dashboard. And I mean, for example, from some very specific examples, you have a petition to list the coyote and wolf species out west because there's lookalike species to wolves that are listed. Imagine that impact of something like that in Texas. Now, it's not proposed here, but it doesn't mean it couldn't get here very easily. When you have, and this pains me to say, but it's true, that hunters in general are very apathetic. They're not worried about what's going on around them. And by that, I mean, we have a deer hunter that worries about deer hunting. And if it's about elk hunting, they're not too concerned about it. Or bear hunting, they're not too concerned about it. As a hunting community with the millions of hunters in the United States, there's the opportunity for an incredibly collectively strong voice. But when all those different hunter types are separate and not worried about something that impacts another hunting community, we're fractured and splintered and we're not strong.
Right.
And so when we have people, the hunting community galvanize around an issue, like all hunters, if you're a bear hunter or not, you should care that there's a consideration out there down the line for an uplisting of different species of wolves or black bears, etc. Because guess what? What happens with those species and the management of carnivores associated maybe with deer and elk that you do care about matters hugely.
Right. Exactly. Okay, now go back to my point about every outdoor communicator, every conservation group, every manufacturer, even, all your bait and bullet guys, everybody should be unified, and that's the point of these writers organizations. Everybody should have a unified message, and and should be beating the drum that for this conservation model, and it's not happening, and that worries me. And I preach it and preach it and preach it, and now I'm reaching out and I'm going, Corey, help me with this. I'm preaching it at the brigades camps. Right before I give them writing tips, I tell them, I said, have any of y'all heard of this? And them kids, of course, is all high school kids, they all look at me, and I go, all right, everything you learn here at this camp is a function of this. It is financed by this conservation model, and it is because of this conservation model that you are here. And everybody's like, wow. And, even the directors and everybody's looking at me going, yeah. And I said, we got to preach that. We have to make this back into a way of life that people can identify and define the reasons why they do the things they do.
I couldn't agree more. We have lobbyists as an organization, state levels, and then specifically right now at the federal level that, every day, that's her job, is to put conservation through hunting, the North American model of wildlife conservation, in front of our elected officials, number one, to inform them and to engage them, and to remind them of both international and domestic policies and the influence of that, because that fundamental understanding of how the sportsmen have sustained wildlife and wildlife habitat across the U.S. is lost on so many people. Oftentimes, it's oftentimes not the most pressing issue, and oftentimes really not even really thought of by many of our elected officials. They're dealing with things like public health and transportation, etc. So
Sure.
We have to put our message in front of them all the time to keep them informed and to remain relevant to decision makers and policy makers.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, if we can get the grassroots, if we can wake up the grassroots to this, maybe they can help the lobbyists.
Yes, sir. That's exactly right.
All right, we're just about out of time, Corey. One more thing. I need some more money.
Well, let's talk about it. Let's support those youth riders. Let's keep them engaged.
All right, sounds great. Corey, thanks for being with us this morning.
Thank you, Herman. I always enjoy it.
All right, hang on just a second. Folks, I hope y'all enjoyed this weekend's edition of News from the Camp House, learned a little something. And this weekend's edition was also brought to us by the Shells Bend Country Club. Country club for folks who don't have a country club. All right, folks, I hope y'all enjoyed it this morning. Y'all just remember, pretty much any day is sure a good day to be out in the woods.